The curtain swayed in the still air of a quiet April morning. A man leaned forward to straighten a picture frame, his back turned, his pistols left on a chair. Behind him, another man lifted a revolver, his hand steady, his face set with betrayal. The hammer fell, the shot thundered in a small Missouri house, and Jesse James, the most infamous outlaw in America, collapsed forward into eternity. It was April 3rd, 1882, and the legend ended not in a blazing shootout with lawmen, but in a moment of treachery at the hands of one of his own. For over a decade, Jesse James had lived by the gun. Born in Clay County, Missouri in 1847, he grew up in a world torn apart by the Civil War. As a teenager, he joined Confederate guerrillas, fighting under Bloody Bill Anderson and William Quantrill. The war turned farm boys into hardened killers, ambushing Union patrols, burning towns, and leaving behind a trail of bodies. Jesse saw men scalped, hanged, and shot without mercy. That brutal schooling carved him into something more than a farmhand's son. It made him a soldier of vengeance. When the war ended, Jesse James refused to lay down his weapons. He and his brother Frank, along with a circle of former guerrillas, turned to outlawry. They robbed banks, stagecoaches, and later trains, striking across Missouri, Kentucky, and beyond. In 1866, Jesse's gang carried out what is considered the first daylight peacetime bank robbery in American history in Liberty, Missouri. Shots were fired, a bystander killed, and the James name whispered with dread. The James Younger gang became notorious. They struck with boldness, sometimes in broad daylight, thundering into towns, faces masked or bare, pistols raised. They raided the Clay County Savings Bank, the bank in Corydon, Iowa, and countless others. When railroads grew into the arteries of America, they turned their guns on trains. In July 1873, they derailed a locomotive near Adair, Iowa, looting the passengers and cargo, proving no frontier system was safe. Their exploits captured the imagination of a restless nation. Newspapers painted Jesse James as a folk hero, a rebel who fought the moneyed interests of the railroads and northern banks. Some called him a modern Robin Hood, though no evidence suggests he ever gave away his loot. The myth was convenient for Jesse, who relished writing letters to the press, justifying his deeds as vengeance for the South's defeat. In truth, he killed without hesitation and left grieving families in his wake. Farmers, guards, and clerks died in the crossfire, victims of a man more concerned with his reputation than mercy. The law hunted him relentlessly. In 1876, Jesse and his gang attempted to rob the First National Bank of Northfield, Minnesota. It was a disaster. The townsfolk fought back with rifles and shotguns, gunning down several of the gang. The younger brothers were captured, bloody and beaten. Only Jesse and Frank escaped, riding hard through thickets and plains until they vanished into Missouri's hills. From that day, the James gang was broken. Yet Jesse persisted, recruiting new blood, determined to keep the legend alive. By the early 1880s, Jesse James was a fugitive with a price on his head. Missouri's governor, Thomas Crittenden, made it clear he wanted Jesse dead, offering a reward so large it tempted even those closest to him. Among Jesse's new recruits were two brothers, Robert and Charles Ford. They were young, eager, and outwardly loyal. Jesse welcomed them into his home in St. Joseph, Missouri, trusting them enough to share meals with his wife, Z, and his children. What he did not know was that Robert Ford was already in secret contact with authorities, bargaining for money and a pardon in exchange for Jesse's life. On the morning of April 3rd, 1882, Jesse rose early in his rented house at 1318 Lafayette Street. He shared breakfast with the Ford brothers. The outlaw seemed at ease, though he had grown increasingly suspicious of ambushes and betrayal in recent months. That morning, something peculiar happened. Jesse removed his gun belt, placing it on a nearby chair. Perhaps the heat bothered him, perhaps he trusted the company, or perhaps fate guided his hand. He walked to the mantel to straighten a picture frame, his back turned to the room. Behind him, Robert Ford drew his Colt revolver. His brother Charlie looked on in silence. Robert fired a single shot into the back of Jesse's head. The outlaw fell forward, dead before he hit the floor, blood pooling into the carpet. He was 34 years old. The Ford brothers stepped back, shaken by the enormity of what they had done. Within hours, the news spread through St. Joseph, then across the country. Jesse James was dead, not slain in a blazing shootout, but betrayed by a man who had shared his table. Crowds gathered at the house, pressing in to glimpse the body of the infamous outlaw stretched out for viewing. Photographers captured the scene, selling images of the corpse as souvenirs. At first, the Ford brothers were celebrated as heroes. They traveled to claim their reward, but admiration quickly soured. People whispered that they had murdered Jesse James in cold blood, that it was cowardice to shoot a man from behind. Songs and ballads began to circulate, condemning Robert Ford as the dirty little coward who shot Mr. Howard, Jesse's alias in St. Joseph. Governor Crittenden had kept his promise. Jesse was gone, and the reign of the James gang was over. Yet the betrayal left a bitter taste, even for those who despised the outlaw. In killing Jesse James, Robert Ford guaranteed his own infamy. He and Charlie tried to capitalize on their act, appearing on stage reenacting the shooting. Audiences booed. Charlie's life spiraled downward until he died young, racked by tuberculosis. Robert wandered the West, opening saloons, chased by Jesse's legend and the disdain of those who never forgave him. In 1892, 10 years after the shot in St. Joseph, Robert Ford himself was gunned down in Colorado by another outlaw, Ed O'Kelly. The cycle of violence continued, closing one chapter of betrayal with another. Jesse James's funeral drew thousands. His mother, Zerelda, displayed his body at the family farm, charging visitors to see his grave. Legends flourished that Jesse had not really died, that he had faked his death, that another man had taken his place in the coffin. These tales only fed the myth, transforming Jesse into something larger than life, a symbol of rebellion, betrayal, and the violent undercurrent of post-war America. The killing of Jesse James was more than the death of one man. It was the end of an era. The Civil War's legacy of guerrilla fighters had given birth to outlaws, and Jesse was the most notorious of them all. His murder at the hands of Robert Ford marked the final punctuation on a bloody sentence written across the frontier. The Robin Hood myth faded, leaving the truth of a man who robbed, killed, and died, not in glory, but in treachery. Thank you for listening to Deserted Trails. Subscribe for more forgotten stories from the old frontier.